Hello, everybody. Thank you very much for joining us today for our special interactive webinar all about leading when nothing is certain. We do have a great session for you today. We are recording it, so nothing to worry about. If your internet does drop, you will be able to catch up on any sections that you missed as well after the session is completed. My name's Kat. I'm from the International Office. We will be helping answer some questions as we go, so we'll be typing some answers before we go to live Q&A towards the end of the session as well. But what I'll do now, I'll pass to my colleagues from the Business School to take you through this webinar.
Hello, so my name's Claire Harding and I am the Programme Leader for the Postgraduate Masters in Human Resource Management, one of the many programmes that we have here at the Business School. I'm also delighted to introduce my colleague Daisy. Daisy, would you like to just give a little background about yourself?
Thank you, Claire. Good morning, everybody. My name is Daisy Russell and I work with Claire in the Business School. I am the personal tutor and teaching fellow for MA HRM programme. Lovely to have you all here today.
Thank you, Daisy. We're also joined by our colleague Susie Dew, who is Head of Postgraduate Programmes here at the university. Hi, Susie.
Hi, Claire. Hi, Daisy. Hello, everybody. Nice to see you. As Claire mentioned, I'm Susie, the Head of Postgrad. Nice to have you here.
Thank you, Susie. So, you're here today to hear a little bit about the idea about leading when nothing is uncertain, because that's pretty common today. And so we're going to look specifically through the lens of people leadership in what we call a VUCA world. And we'll explore this concept of VUCA as we go through the session. So, by the end of today, you will understand a little bit more about what we mean by VUCA. And I'll go into a lot more depth on that. You'll recognise why the world is so VUCA right now. We'll look at what this actually means in terms of people, employees, and as a leader of the future, how that would impact you. And we'll look at some of the things that leaders can do to help navigate people through uncertain times. Now, very importantly, are we using Teams or are we using Zoom today? Apologies, I just suddenly had a...
Oh yeah, no problem. We're on Zoom today, but I can go through some of the buttons.
Yes,
if you want me
please.
to.
Sorry, Kat,
Yeah.
I just realised suddenly.
No worries, Claire. So yeah, usually everybody, if you're once you become a member of Hearts, you'll get access to a lot of Microsoft applications, so Teams, Office. But today, obviously, we're using Zoom. You've got a few buttons that you can use to interact with us panelists. Please do interact with us as much as possible. That's what we're here for. So you'll see you've got the chat button. You can use the chat to talk to each other, add comments in. Do just be mindful, it is an open session, so just be cautious about sharing too much of your personal information in the chat. But if you want to put what country you're from, what course you're coming to study at Hearts, that would be great, and you can say hello to each other. And then you'll also see you've got another button called Q&A. Any questions you've got for us panelists, pop them in the Q&A, just because the chat tends to move quite quickly. We will be typing some answers as we go, so do check out those answered questions as well, because you might see somebody's asked a question that you were also interested in. So please do use these features, and we just want to engage from you, hear from you, and help you out as well, so you know what you're preparing for when you come to Hearts.
Thank you, Kat. Sorry about that. Okay, and very importantly for this session today, I want to make it interactive. I want you to be part of this session. I want to hear from you. I want to hear, some of the thoughts that you have around some of these topics. So in order to do that, I'm asking you to please join Mentimeter. Okay, that's a tool that we use a lot here at the university. Okay, so you can either scan this QR code straight away, or you can go to www.menti.com. Once you're in there, you can enter the code 68973133. If you're watching this after the session, you will not be able to access it. This is just for online live session, and I believe that Kat has kindly put these details also into the chat. So really great if you can join this, and then you'll be able to participate and be part of the discussion. But remember, it's anonymous. Okay, so I can't really see who's making what comments. So don't feel that, oh, people are going to be judging me or anything, because we're not. This is just, no answer is silly, no answer is wrong. It's just about your opinion. All right, so please do join this Mentimeter. So with that in mind, this word uncertainty, how does this make you feel? So I'm delighted somebody has already responded, feeling a little stressed about uncertainty. And that's quite natural. It's quite natural to feel, because many of us like to know what's going to happen, but that's not always going to be the case. So we've got, excited to see opportunity. Fantastic. And that's what it can be. Uncertainty can mean new possibilities. It can mean difference. So yeah, we're all going to have different feelings about this word, uncertainty. So super. And then we have somebody who's not quite sure, and that's okay. So we all experience uncertainty a little differently. Thank you. So we come to this idea of VUCA. I've said it. What does it actually mean? Well, it's an acronym. So we have the 4 different words that come under that. So first of all, V stands for volatility. And it's about this fast-paced world in which we are living. There is rapid change. We're going from one thing to the other. It's all happening so quickly. And then we talked about uncertainty, which brings mixed emotions. And that's we're not sure what's going to happen next. It's really hard to make a strategy because things are changing. And then we have this concept of complexity, and that is that there are so many different things going on, so many things that we need to be aware of, and that through the way that they combine together, they create this uncertainty, and they all come together again in this volatility, this fast pace. And then finally, this all comes together to the idea that there's ambiguity. There are no clear answers to this. It's not clear sometimes what we need to do. And that's what we call a VUCA environment. Okay, and it's become very, very common in the world that we exist in today. It's something that companies are having to navigate through constantly. And of course, leaders are having to lead their people through this VUCA environment. So over to you to think about, what are some of the things that have been happening in the world, in the workplace over the last few years that in your mind has made it this volatile, uncertain, complex and ambiguous environment in which we operate? So just feel free to type in words that you think would be relevant. What has made it so volatile, so uncertain, so complex, and so ambiguous?
Just while waiting for some answers to come through, Claire, as well, I always tell people this is a great tool to have a practice on, because this is Menti is something that you will use in your lectures once you join Heart. So if you can get familiar with it now, and remember, it's all anonymous. Don't worry if you're not sure if your answer is going to be right. Just put up what you think and we can all discuss it together. No one will see that it's you that's put the answer in if anybody's worried about that. So you should be able to type it on your devices now.
Thank you, Kat. Nobody wanting to have a go at this? If you, oh, artificial intelligence, absolutely. One of the biggest things that we are seeing in the workplace right now is the impact of artificial intelligence. And it's certainly volatile because it is happening very quickly from month to month. The position around artificial intelligence is changing how we look at work, how we do work. So really having a big impact. It's making everything very uncertain because we don't quite know where it's going to land. It's complex. It's bringing in a new dimension to the workplace and certainly creating ambiguity. So yeah, absolutely. And the skills gap, very, very much a great difficult, and that kind of comes out partly from some of the pieces around artificial intelligence and also this idea of digital transformation. Absolutely. These are all playing together to bring together a lot of ambiguity in the workplace. Any thoughts around some of the events that have been happening over the last few years that have also created this VUCA environment? Anything that you think has impacted where we're working right now? And if you're not sure, you can also use the chat facility. If you don't want to use Mentimeter, I should say that. Yeah, so absolutely, the country conflicts, that's having a huge impact because from day to day, we really don't know. For example, we're seeing the impact on the price of oil right now. And that is really, we don't know about pricing, we don't know about supply of goods. As you say, inflation is being impacted. Yeah, and absolutely, it's bringing about this global instability. And there's some big players around at the moment, and we just don't know what they're going to do. And so everybody's constantly kind of thinking about it, wondering what's going to be the impact of this. And that is impacting the workplace, absolutely, the economy, very much around things like inflation rates. For some of you, maybe in your countries, you've had exchange rate issues. So the currency is having a very big impact. It impacts the way that you trade. It also impacts affordability in your home country, and therefore that impacts things like salaries, employment. All of these things absolutely are creating this VUCA, VUCA, volatile, uncertain, complex, ambiguous environment. So thank you very much for some of the thoughts that you've expressed there. And they absolutely recognise what I'd pulled up. So some of the things that I had was the whole concept of globalization and the fact that, we now are a 24/7 culture. That we would expect different countries to host telephone lines for us, customer service queries, so that if I have a query at 1 o'clock in the morning, I can go and speak to somebody. So the globalization has really impacted the way that we work, longer hours, for example, but also different types of skills in different types of countries. So that's ever evolving. And as you've already said, AI absolutely changing the way that we work. One that I just pulled into here, which I think has changed, although hopefully that particular one's gone, COVID, changed the way that we worked. And it's brought about the rise of hybrid working, because organisations realised that people could work from home and still be effective. But then in some countries, the companies are now saying, no, we don't want that. We want you back in the workplace. And so there's a lot of uncertainty about that. People have got used to working at home and don't want to go back into the workplace. But for leaders, that creates issues around things like culture. Okay, the way that the organisation works, the sense of belonging to an organisation. So COVID had a huge impact. And of course, we constantly don't know around the corner what the next threat might be. And so that's a constant kind of a piece of change around us. And then finally, as you've said, is conflict around the world. Currently, we see conflict in Iran, we see conflict, Russia and Ukraine, and all of these things impact people in different countries, but actually they're having a global impact on all of us. So one way that we can have a look at this and actually think about these type of impacts on the workplace and what create VUCA is to use a simple tool that we call Pestle. So just giving you a little bit of theoretical framework to help you if you are in the future thinking about something like this. So studying on a business degree, we will always be needing to think about what's the wider environment in which we operate. And Pestle enables us to think about that. So thinking about things like what is the political influences on the workplace, economic, which one of you was introduced just now, social, things like aging populations, the difference of demographics today through globalization. Nations are much more diverse, and we see that within organizations as well. Technology, you talked about digital transformation, AI, the legal environment in which we have may be constantly changing and bringing in new uncertainties, new ways of having to work. And of course, the environment and different impacts. For example, in the UK today, it's 34 degrees, which is unheard of. But that's an impact of the environment, and it impacts the way that we're working, creates uncertainty. So all of these things are ways that we can think about this VUCA world. So when you think about this, and it's maybe a challenging question, but have a little think about it. When you think then as a people manager about managing people in this uncertain, volatile, ambiguous, complex environment, what are the kind of things that leaders need to be thinking about, in your opinion? Remember, there's no right, there's no wrong. It's just your opinion. And always in class, what I would always ask you to say is to think about what is the impact and to explain that. That's all you need to be able to do, to justify. And absolutely, mental health is probably the number one concern for leaders today, because all of this uncertainty, the things like the economic factors, the uncertainty around conflict, all of those are impacting employees. And definitely leaders need to be thinking about caring about the welfare of their employees, their teams, the people that they work with. Absolutely. Any other thoughts about things that might be causing concern? Yeah, absolutely. Motivation and engagement. Yes, very much so, because we're seeing statistics have shown us that engagement has been dropping in recent times. And, you know, clearly there's a link here between motivation and engagement. So, yeah, something that really managers need to be focusing on. And I saw in the chat there, I believe that change management is probably, yeah, an absolute key skill for people managers right now. Really very much being able to help people navigate as we do face constant changes. And actually it's a skill that a lot of people, managers and leaders don't actually have. And so there's a lot of reliance on HR, which is my field. So I should have said at the beginning, before joining the university nearly 4 years ago, I was an HR practitioner, human resource, as director of vice president of HR for a pharmaceutical company. And so it was often my role to help leaders to navigate change. And yeah, understanding some stuff may be affected more by different things. And I think that's a really important point to make, is that we're all different. That showed right at the beginning when we did our Mentimeter and we talked about uncertainty, and some people felt unsettled by it. Some people were like, yeah, whatever, I'll get on with it. Some people are like, yes, there's a challenge here. Everybody's different, so you can't treat everybody the same way in the workplace. There is this absolute diversity. And Daisy, did I miss another one from the chat? I saw something come up and I didn't catch it in time.
Yes. We had a suggestion of recruitment and employee retention.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And that is a real challenge for organisations. And somebody mentioned earlier about the concept of shortage of skills. And that makes what we call the war for talent increasingly more difficult. So the idea that organisations are all competing for the very best, particularly around some of this technology area, things like AI. And so retaining people can be extremely difficult during these type of times, and particularly people will be looking to try to find organisations that offer higher safety. And if you come on to one of our courses, you will, more than likely have a little look at some of the motivation pieces, and certainly around that safety, psychological safety, etc. That's really important. So yeah, the turnover, people retention, really important for leaders to be concerned about right now. And yeah, pay and salary is a real challenge, and particularly during high inflation times. And again, it's also part of that retention piece, and people leaving organisations to go for better salaries. But also at the other end of the spectrum, it's also about organisations paying people an amount which enables them to be sustainable, that enables them to be able to live to at least a minimum level. And I think that's something that is increasingly we're seeing across countries, is the recognition that people need to have a fair pay. So absolutely, some really nice thoughts and ideas around here. So thank you. So you've kind of actually managed to meet most of the things that I had around here. And some of the key people changes that we have under this VUCA environment are anxiety and well-being. So absolutely stress. And that's a difficult, and it's really about being aware. It's about recognizing that individualism, and having open channels. And we'll talk about that here with communication gaps. So communication is a really important area for leaders, particularly in times of uncertainty. Really important to be communicating in a timely way, to be communicating openly, to be communicating honestly. But unfortunately, a lot of organisations don't get it right, and people fill in these gaps. So if there is a gap in communication, people will read something into it that maybe is not there. And this increases the uncertainty. This increases the complexity that people are feeling. It definitely increases that ambiguity. So ensuring that communication is a priority it's really important during these uncertain times. And organisations will have people just specifically looking at communication to ensure that there aren't these gaps. However, it's a really important skill of a leader to be able to communicate in the right way. For example, I was talking to somebody very recently. They were saying that they are going through some uncertain times as an organisation. And the leaders were doing a fantastic job of saying about, you know, we're going to have some difficult times ahead, but if we stick together, we'll get through this. It'll be great. Unfortunately, they then finished it off by saying, but if you want to go, then go. That's not the right communication. That was not the right communication for a leader, because immediately people thought, oh, okay, I'm not actually really valued during this difficult period. So getting that key message across is key. We've talked about the idea of remote hybrid team management and how do you manage people that are maybe not in your office, maybe in different countries, in particular globalization, and the fact that we can do hybrid working now means that teams can be dispersed across the world. And it also brings up challenges of time difference management. And I'm sure there may be people on the call today that are from different time zones. So we need to be conscious to make sure that we set things that accommodate everybody. As you've already mentioned, the whole piece around retaining talent. And then there's this other piece about fairness and trust. And it's about treating people fairly. It's about recognizing those differences and therefore earning trust. So leaders need to earn the trust of people. You can't make people trust you. You have to earn it. So really important. So just a kind of, I've talked a lot about leadership and I thought it was important to actually give you a definition. I'm sure you've all got your thoughts around leadership. But I mean, if you want to put something into the chat, please feel free about what you see as leadership. However, this definition comes from the CIPD, which is the Chartered Institute of Personal and Development, which is the UK's body for human resource management. They are the key people driving policy around human resource management. I say in the UK, but they are also recognised across a lot of the world. And on the MAHRM, we are affiliated, so we have a joint accreditation with the CIPD. So anybody completing our degree, our master's degree, would get a CIPD qualification. So I used their definition of leadership, which is about understanding what drives people and uses that to reach a shared goal so that everybody has that vision together. And understanding what drives people means about those different aspects that not everybody is exactly the same. And what they say is that there are 3 key elements to leadership, and that's having self-awareness and expressing personal qualities clearly. So that piece around communication, influencing others, motivating and inspiring those stakeholders. So we said earlier, motivation, engagement is really key during times of uncertainty. And then the leaders will define, clarify and revise these common goals. So it's all about having a shared vision and about, during uncertain times saying, okay, it's difficult, but we're all in this together. And this is the way that we're going to try and go. And we may have to change that direction, but this is what we're going to try to do. So a leader plays an absolutely key role during VUCA times, and a good leader will help people navigate. So key leadership behaviours that we need to see, the 3 C's, is around this clarity. So having clear goals, repeating communication, caring. And I think sometimes that's not what all our leaders demonstrate. And that's around listening and thinking about people's well-being and actually taking an interest in it, not just looking at it as a statistic, but actually really understanding it and doing something about it. And then being consistent, which comes back to that point I made earlier around being fair and being transparent. And those things will help build the trust and will help people to navigate through times of uncertainty. So that's really my piece around navigating type of a VUCA environment through people leadership. This is just a bite-sized example of what you might experience. But now it's back over to you because I want to check that you've understood what I've been talking about today. So I've got a couple of questions. Don't worry when it comes up and says that you've got to answer quickest. We're not going to do that because that puts pressure on. I'm not putting pressure on. This is just for you to check your understanding. Okay, so have a go and see what you've learned from today. So join the quiz. I've got 2 players ready. Anybody else going to join? If you don't worry. You'll still be able to have a guess in your minds and see if you're right. Okay, we're going to get going. The company changes its policy suddenly with no warning. This is an example of volatility, uncertainty, complexity, or ambiguity. It's a sudden change with no warning. Everyone has voted. Well done. Somebody got volatility. It is absolutely example because we talked about volatility as being fast, rapid change. And this is exactly that idea that suddenly something that you've been doing is completely changed. I'm going to look at Daisy. Daisy, did you get that one right?
I did actually.
Excellent.
I did, yeah.
Right.
But I can also see the suggestion of it being uncertain as well, because it is, isn't it?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It does create uncertainty. It's a little bit complex as well, and it's a little bit ambiguous. So absolutely, I think if anybody put any of those could be right. I'm going with volatility just because it's the very quick change. But yeah, absolutely. Okay, next question. Our 2 players are ready. Okay.
So not.
So you have many different problems happening at the same time. Which of these would you think is most likely? So again, we could say that they're all correct, but which one is it really more towards? Is it volatility? Is it uncertainty? Is it complexity? Or is it ambiguity? Which do you think? Okay, we've got 10 more seconds. If you're not sure, just make a guess. I won't see who answers. Absolutely. So as we said, it could be any of them, but in this case, more likely to be about complexity, because complexity is about lots of things happening. Okay, so, but again, that lots of things happening creates that uncertainty, and it definitely creates the ambiguity. So well done to everybody. Right, next question. Got 3 players ready.
Right.
What is the most important from a leader during uncertainty? So is it giving all the answers? Is it clear communication? Is it making fast decisions? Or is it controlling our employees? Which do you think is the most likely? It's not to say that some of them couldn't have elements that are correct, but which one is the closest to what we've talked about today? Everyone has voted. Oops. Absolutely. Well done, clear communication. Giving all the answers is an interesting idea, but it's in times of uncertainty, you can't give all the answers because we don't know them. So making fast decisions is great, but that can add to the volatility and means that they may not always be well thought through. And controlling is definitely not something we want to do, particularly when we recognise that everybody is different. So absolutely, clear communication is essential. And then our last question. So, if you don't have full information, what should a leader do? Say nothing. Wait until everything is clear. Avoid employee questions, or be honest and share what you know. Okay. Oops, that didn't work again. Okay, yes. So probably the one which I would certainly go for is to be honest and share what you know at this time. But absolutely, I understand the idea, and this is what we were talking about certainly within the university here. We always sort of think, yeah, okay, just justify. So wait until everything is clear. Is also, I can understand you're trying to create a little bit of certainty. The only thing that we might find with that is that's creating that communication gap that we talked about, and that might mean that people will fill in untrue information in their own minds because they've not got the information. But it's absolutely better to do that than to say nothing or avoid questions. And you can just sort of say, look, we're trying to get all the information, here's a little bit of communication, but we are going to wait until everything's a little bit clearer. So, you know, really well done. Thank you very much for participating in that. And really, that's the end of my presentation today. Do you have any questions?
Excellent. Thank you so much, Claire and Daisy. I've learned a lot during that session as well. So I always find these taster sessions great to get involved in. So yes, now is the time, please, everyone. If you've got any questions at all, please use this opportunity to ask them. You can put them in the chat, you can put them in the Q&A, and I'll read them out for you. So you can ask anything you want about the course, the session today, just to help you prepare for joining Hearts. I've got a question actually for you just while we're waiting. Oh, here we go. We've had the first one come in, so I'll read this one out. So somebody said, in your experience, how can organisations best combine technology and people-focused leadership to ensure employees still feel supported and valued?
That's an interesting question. So the question was, how do we kind of combine the people side of things with the technology side of things? I think that's really what we're saying here. And it's actually something that a lot of organisations are trying to figure out at the moment. AI is changing how we do things, but it should not be about taking away roles, but it's about how we do things differently. One of the key pieces that I've certainly seen from my experience is about training people. And it's about helping employees to learn the skills that they need in order to be able to use the new technologies. What's really important, and it's a huge debate for us in human resources at the moment, is the fact that you can have technology, but you still need the human. Okay, you've got to have the human in the process. So even if you've got AI creating a policy for you, which might have taken you a day to write before, and now it's taking 20 minutes at most, you still need that human to actually go through and say, does this work for us as an organisation? Is this right for us? Does this wording, does it meet our cultural needs? So you need that human touch, but then you also need the human touch to actually communicate it, to ensure that it is being implemented in the way that was intended, to ensure that it's monitored and evaluated. There's always that human role, but it is about helping people to understand that, to not be afraid of the technology, to learn with it and actually use it to be part of the job. But it is difficult because we are hearing in the news headlines all the time, entry-level jobs are going to go. But when I talk to people, they're saying, yeah, it's changed, but there are still always going to need to be entry jobs. So I don't know if that answers your question. I could probably talk about it for a whole session. But I'm aware that I haven't got that long. But thank you. I think that's a really interesting question.
That's great. Thank you, Claire. No, really good. And yeah, I can see the person's put, yeah, super insightful. So thank you for that.
Cool.
We have had some questions come through in the chat as well. So somebody's put, in emergency situations, what should the leader do?
Well, we had an emergency situation. Sorry, I'm really, if you ever got taught by me, you'll hear me talk about COVID a lot, only because it was the most amazing social science research piece, because that was exactly the emergency situation where certainly we went from this day to this day, from working in the office to not working in the office, to suddenly the IT team having to think about how do we get everybody online from home? How do we get the equipment out that's needed? How do we ensure that our delivery is still happening? How do we ensure that we can meet the needs of the customers that are still there? The role of leader during that time was number one, and I've got to say I was one of those people because I was actually the person who had to make the decision to close the office. Was number one about the communication. It's about having the timely communication, communicating what you can to keep communicating. I think that's the most important bit. So during a time of crisis, it's not just about that initial, this is what's happening. It's about the constant communication. You can't actually over communicate in a crisis. It's not possible, because you need to keep people reassured. You need to let them know you are there. I think the other thing for me about a leader in crisis is to be visible. So it's not just about a communication through email, it's about communication through technology, it's about communication through videos. It's about maybe being present in a particular environment to demonstrate that the leadership is there. It's about being reassuring. It's about making those tough decisions as well. As I said, making that decision, we made a decision to close the office about a week before the UK went into lockdown. We made that decision. I made that decision based on the information I had around me about people's health. I had the employee wellbeing, and I could also see that employees were getting stressed about coming to the office. So it was about making that decision to say, we're going to go ahead of the curve. We're going to make this decision now. And it's about influencing. So it was about influencing others to say, okay, that's a big decision, but we're going to do it. So I think all of those pieces are about being a leader, but it's about, most importantly, that communication piece.
Brilliant. Thank you, Claire. Great tips there. I can see somebody's asked as well, will the presentation be made available afterwards? Yes, we are recording the session. When it's ready, we will email you to let you know that you can go back and rewatch it whenever you like. So we'll email that out to you. If anybody else has any other questions, please feel free, pop them in the Q&A or the chat. We've still got a few minutes left of the session. Um,
I've got a quick question.
yeah.
If anybody wants to put, just going off that last point that I made, if anybody has any thoughts themselves about what they think is important for a leader during a crisis, during a sudden change, I'd love to hear from you. So just pop it into the chat. Okay.
While we're waiting for those to come in, we have had another question as well, which is another great one. Between human and an AI, which of these should heavily be relied on in decision making? So human or AI?
Really interesting question. Really interesting question. I'm going to give you my opinion. My opinion is the most important to rely on is human decision making. In my opinion, some people I'm sure would argue. I think it would depend on the type of AI you are using, and some are written in different ways and may have a better decision making ability than others. But I think at the end of the day, we should never rely on solely on AI for a decision. I think, we see it all the time at the university, people using AI, and it's ghosts. It creates fabricated information. And if you're relying on AI to make an important decision, that could have huge consequences. And I'm glad. Thank you for agreeing with me, Jackson. It's I feel strongly. Maybe it will change, but I don't think so. I think there's always, as I said earlier, there's always got to be an element of the person behind all AI decision making and all AI work. We know that. I mean, for example, we know that it's a few years ago now, so it's a bit of an older example, but it was around 2017, I think it was, and Amazon were using AI purely for their selection process of employees. And the way that the program was written meant it was actually biased towards white middle-aged men. That was the programming, and yet they were solely at one stage relying on that tool for their selection process to decide on who went through to the selection, whose CV got through. So that's an exact example of where relying so heavily on AI can create huge issues. So, and that's quite an old version, that's quite an old example, but I just use that to kind of bring it to light.
Thanks, Claire. Yeah, that's a really good example. Actually, I'd forgotten about that. So yeah, really good to resurface that. I've got a question for you that I wonder if some of our offer holders in the audience might be thinking. So some of them won't be in leadership roles yet, but they're aspiring to be so. How can they practice these leadership behaviours that you've mentioned without being in the role yet to keep their skills fresh?
I think one of the key things about leadership is you don't have to be a people manager to be a leader. I think a lot of people automatically assume leadership and people management go together. They're two very different things. We're talking about the behaviours of a leader. So one of the key things through your time at the university is clear communication. You are going to work in groups. No matter how much you may not like it at times, you are going to work in groups. So clear communication is really key. Clear communication through your studies with your lecturers, your program leader, your personal tutors is really important. So you can practice those skills. You can practice communication during your classes. The transparency piece, again, you can practice that through group work, you can practice that through your assignments. We build assignments that will help you deliver, to develop some of these skills. Really important for us at the business school that we don't just provide you with theories, but we're actually providing you with practical opportunities to be able to develop some of these core skills. So I think that's really important to take away today, is that it's okay if you haven't got those, because we're going to do our very best to help you develop those during your time at the Hertfordshire Business School. What I'd also like to point out is the topic I've taught today, I'm from the HR team, but we teach some of this on a number of different programs. So we will teach people management and leadership across international business. We do it across oh my goodness, my brain, management. We'll do it across a number of different programs. You'll see there'll be an HR element somewhere, and that will be our team that's delivering that. So some of this content you'll come across, but you'll be developing it further and understanding a lot of the tools that you need for people management.
Great, thank you, Claire. Really insightful again. I think that's a really good thing to remember as well. It's not, you don't just have to think about it as the work roles, as you say, the group work, everything like that is these skills that you're building. We have had somebody put an answer in the chat to your previous question as well. So
Yes.
I will read it out so anybody who's watching the recording after can see it. So someone's put, for me, great leaders make thoughtful decisions and stay resilient, showing strength not only in success, but also in difficult moments. Leadership means leading by example while helping others become the best version of themselves. It is not about being perfect, but about being genuine, consistent, and willing to grow alongside the people they lead.
That's absolutely lovely. I think you've pulled out some really key bits there. And one of the things I really jump on there, or two things I jump on there. Number one is resilience. And that's something I think you really need to develop during your time here at University of Hertfordshire. I think it's a great opportunity because resilience, I think, is absolutely key. And that's also part of the mental health piece. And we have opportunities to work and to develop your resilience, particularly within your programs, but also some of the wider activities that the university offer to help you build with this. So I think resilience, absolutely. And the other piece there is that genuine piece. And that's there's a lot of research around now about good leaders being genuine. And there's a lot of different leadership styles. For example, if you want to have a read about this further in preparation for your studies, servant leadership is a very nice theory to understand about how we can be genuine and help others. We're there for the people that we are leading rather than directing people. And that idea of thoughtful decisions, really nice. So thank you for that contribution. Lovely.
Perfect, thank you. I think that's all the questions done then. Lots of great feedback in the chat as well. So thank you very much to everyone who has joined us today and taken part as well. We do love, seeing you interact with these sessions, hearing your ideas and your thoughts as well. We're almost at the end, so if there aren't any other questions, we can finish the session now. But Daisy and Claire, thank you so much for giving up your time today and sharing this wonderful taster. Any final thoughts or takeaways that you want to share before we close the session?
I just want to say I am really looking forward to hopefully seeing some of you in the classroom, if not at least on campus. My name's Claire Harding. You can see the face. Come up and say hello to me. Say I saw you on that training session or that taster. This is what I think about leadership, or this is what I think about volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity. You'll never forget that now. But just say hello. Hopefully you'll find everybody at the university, we're all very, very approachable. And we just want you to succeed. So yeah, please do seek us out. And good luck.
Excellent, thank you so much. Oh, we've had one final question. I will just ask this then. What theory did you mention that they can study? So I know you mentioned somebody wanted to do a bit of pre-reading. What was the theory?
Yeah, so this one I was talking about was servant leadership. And it's specifically by somebody called Robert Greenleaf. He's the main person that writes about it. That's just one theory. There's also some pieces around, oh gosh, I just can't think off the top of my head. oh, sorry, it's gone for a moment. Some other sort of theories which are around this genuine piece. If you just do a search, you should come across some of the pieces around there which are about being yourself, but in a genuine way, and caring about people. And that is kind of the most important piece that we're seeing around leadership research right now. So, but I've put it into the chat, Servant Leadership by Greenleaf, if you'd like to have a little read about that.
Excellent, thank you. And with that then, we'll let you all go now, wherever you are in the world, at various time zones as well. Some of you will be watching this in the evening, so thank you for logging on. But yes, thank you so much to the team, and we'll look forward to welcoming you onto the campus in September. All right, thanks everybody.
All the
Bye.
best, everyone.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.